All right, good evening, everybody. We're back from closed session. Sorry we're running a few minutes late. We did take action on some new employee hires, and it was unanimous, and Dr. Hanson will talk about that during his superintendent's report to introduce those new folks to our district, or the new positions in our district. Do want to open up with the Pledge of Allegiance, and why don't we have Mr. Cisneros? Victor. The new principal of Ramona High School, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you for keeping me on my toes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Victor. If you're following along in the agenda, we were going to have a presentation from American Heart Association, but some of the folks weren't able to make it, so we're going to reschedule that. So we will get a presentation from them later in the year, just not this evening. So that takes us to Dr. Hanson, your superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, President Lee, and it's nice to see everybody this evening. As President Lee mentioned, the board did take action in closed session 5-0 for the following positions, and I'd like to have them stand, and I'll read a brief bio and introduce them. And if they have family members here, we'd love to have them introduce their family to us as well. But we're going to start first with the new Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Support, K through 12, and that's Dr. Jacqueline Perez. If you'd like to stand, Jackie. Dr. Perez comes to Riverside Unified with a rich background filled with leadership experiences. Most recently, she has sat in the seats of high school principal, associate superintendent, teaching and learning and human resources and labor relations, and her current role as Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. In her current role as Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services in Glendale Unified School District, she leads the instructional initiatives for middle schools and high schools and elementary schools and supports leadership development across the district to include instructional technology and assessment. Dr. Perez is an active member of CALSA, the California Association of Latino Superintendents Administrators. She is currently on the board of directors as president-elect and will be president this next year. Dr. Perez is excited about joining the RUSD team and supporting our district in all endeavors. Dr. Perez, welcome to Riverside Unified. Next is Kirsten Frosto. Director of Elementary Education. And we know Kirsten, so I guess I should be formal, Mrs. Frosto. But throughout her career here in Riverside Unified School District, she has been a learner with great desires to continuously improve. As an assistant principal at 2 different elementary schools, in her current position as Director of Strategic Initiatives and Program Development, she has demonstrated character, strong relationships, and believed in the potential for future change through empowering and enabling students, staff, and community. On a personal note, maybe some of you know this, others don't, but she has received a few accolades over the years. She received RCOE's Models of Excellence for Pachapa's Hearts program, the after-school program. She was the Region 19 Co-Administrator of the Year for RASM and AXA. She is an NCAA national champion in synchronized swimming from her days in college, academic All-Big Ten, and Ohio State Scholar athlete. And so Kirsten is full of a lot of skills and talents. We're just so pleased that she's going to be serving in this position as Director of Elementary School for our district. Congratulations, Kirsten. The next position is for Director 4 of Strategic Initiatives and Program Development, the position which has been held by Kirsten for the last few years. And this new person is Daniel Sosa. Mr. Sosa is currently the Director of Assessment and Instructional Technology in the Chino Valley Unified School District. And prior to his current position as director, he spent many years in Rialto Unified School District as a teacher, an elementary and middle school principal, and also the Senior Director for Assessment, Research, and Evaluation. While serving as both the Senior Director of Assessment, Research, and Evaluation and in his current role as Director for Assessment and Instructional Technology, Mr. Sosa has demonstrated strategic thinking, dedication, and enthusiasm necessary to lead two high-achieving school districts. And he has made meaningful contributions in both those school districts. We're fortunate that he brings that to RUSD, and it's important to note that Mr. Sosa is a product of Riverside, and he's also a member of the Riverside community and has 4 children attending RUSD schools. And I just met them, a couple at Revere Elementary School and also at King High School. So, Daniel, welcome home. Now, you have family members here. Why don't you stand up loud and proud and introduce who is here to support you? Why don't you go ahead and stand up and do a quick turn? So I think it's pretty obvious to tell which kids are at King and which kids are at Rivera. Welcome. And last but certainly not least, the new principal of Magnolia Elementary School, Hector Alegria. Hector started teaching in the Los Angeles Unified School District, where he taught elementary as well as adult ESL. He then moved to Fontana Unified, where he taught and acted, served as an English learner coordinator. In 2004, Hector entered administration, where he has served in the roles of assistant principal and middle school principal, and most currently, principal of Charles H. Lee Elementary School, as well as Paramount Elementary School in the Azusa Unified School District. Under Hector's leadership, Lee Elementary exited program improvement status and grew from being the lowest school in the district to a school of choice, receiving that recognition. And at Paramount Elementary School, which I believe is his current school, it has the school that has become the highest scores in the school district. We're so grateful that Hector has chosen to come and join us as the principal here in Riverside at Magnolia Elementary School. Congratulations, Hector. So those are the 4 new colleagues which the board took action on. And there are several others on the agenda today that the board has requested respectfully to take action on and consent. And they are Riverside Unified folks, most of them. And I don't know if they're here, but STEM Academy has a new assistant principal, and that is Jeremy Standerfer. And Jeremy has been the teacher on special assignment at STEM, and now he will become the assistant principal. We have a new assistant principal at Poly High School, Tacey Duncan. Tacey has been the assistant principal the last few years at Shamawa Middle School, and she applied for and is a successful candidate to move over to Poly as an assistant principal. We also have a second new assistant principal at Poly High School, and that is Teresa Butler. Many of us know Teresa Butler as the Instructional Support Specialist of Secondary Math, and she applied for and is a successful candidate to be a new assistant principal at Poly High School. We have Mark Colwell. Many of us know Mark, his longtime physics teacher and water polo coach at Poly High School, and now he has been in charge of the online program at EOC. Mark is the new assistant principal at Shamawa Middle School. We also have Ashley Fulmer. Ashley is a longtime teacher at Sierra Middle School. She was last year as an interim assistant principal at Ramona High School, as one of the assistant principals was out on leave for most of the year. She's returning to Sierra Middle School as the new assistant principal. And then we have Marie Coover, who has been promoted to the Instructional Service Specialist, Elementary Education. And last, but certainly not least, we have also Gabby Adami, who is going to be the new Facilities Analyst in our Facilities Department. And so we welcome all these new and we did make one move. Jody Gonzalez, longtime assistant principal in our district at Poly High School, has left being a mighty bear to now a North Husky. And Jody is assistant principal over at North and is excited, and we're excited for her in that move. And so those are all on the calendar this evening, and we congratulate our colleagues, and we welcome our new colleagues here at Riverside Unified. And so let's give them just one more round of applause. Okay, school board members and folks in the audience, let me just give a quick superintendent's report of activities that have been going on over the last course of several weeks, and of course this summer. We don't meet as often in the summer, and so some of this is going to be new, and others you've heard about through the board mail and things such as that. But as you're aware, last Thursday, August the 17th, we held our all-day leadership team symposium with all the administrators. Approximately 220 managers and confidentials were in attendance. And the event was incredibly successful as we shared our theme for 2017-18, which you've heard is Embrace the Journey. And we're going to talk more about that in the convocation this Thursday. And we just had a wonderful time together setting out the vision and the strategies and reviewing the work that we've done over the last several years. As this morning, we had a chance to welcome 330 new employees to Riverside Unified School District at our new employee welcome held this morning at Central Middle School gym, or not gym, but the auditorium. And since last year at this time, those are the 330 employees that we have join us. 150 have been with our classified professional support staff, 136 have been certificated employees, and 44 managers. And just a reminder to the board members, our district-wide convocation, and for those new employees, you're welcome to come this Thursday, but our district-wide convocation, we call it our Professional Development Day, with all 4,000 employees is this Thursday. Our city doesn't have a venue big enough to hold all of us, and so we split up in two, as you know. The first will begin at 7:30 in the morning. We want you to be there, board members, at King High School. The program will start at 8 o'clock sharp. Make sure you see Beth for your reserved parking so that you can get there and have a chance to meet and mingle. And then at Ramona High School is when we will meet with all of our professional support staff for the classified employees, and we need to be down the hill from King to Ramona by 10 a.m. And each convocation will last about 90 minutes. For the summer, we've done a lot of summer camps and summer schools and things this weekend. Let me give you a brief this last summer, let me give you a brief update. Elementary summer camp was hosted at 13 school sites with approximately 2,100 students in attendance for 5 weeks. Now you recall last time we held this, what a great success it was. 75% of our students came back from summer vacation last year having not slid. They continue to remain at grade level, and so we're just grateful that we could expand that by 1,000 plus kids. Middle schools had approximately 880 students participate in summer school, and our 5 comprehensive high schools had approximately 2,500 kids participate. And this is the first year in a long time that we've gone back hosting summer enrichment at all 5 comprehensive high schools, to include EOC. And so we had over just about 5,000 students participating this last summer. And I had a chance last week. It was last week. I'm thinking if I was with any of you, but it was one of the neatest events I had a chance to go to. That was the Starting Blocks Riverside Aquatics Complex swim program, the closing ceremonies, the partnership that we have with RCC, the funding by Tilden and Coyle. Janet Downey retired, and she was in charge of not just the after-school programs, but the summer program. And this was her second to last day. And do you know that every year since we have started these swim lessons, we've averaged 300 kids every summer. that we've taught how to swim, and who knows how many lives we've saved. So 300 times 6, 1,800 kids have gone through. Do you know this year alone, with extra funding and grants, we taught 2,000 RUSD students how to swim. There's no way that we could have done without the partnership with Tilden and Coyle, without RCC's foundation, without our generous support. And so kudos to the aquatics program and for the 2,000 kids. And again, you can't put a price to that, especially the lives that we're teaching or saving. And so it was just a great summer, a lot of things going on, and I compliment all of the staff for working so hard throughout the summer. And I'd like to finish up my report right now by giving our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Carmen Day, an opportunity to provide an update on some professional development, which was offered to our teachers this summer as well.
Good evening. We had some exciting professional training opportunities for our teachers this summer, and I just want to list a few of those. We had a digital institute for teachers, training on computer science and computational thinking, training on project-based learning, course leads for secondary and elementary mentor training, Read 180 training, restorative practices training, professional growth system training, our data binders for our principals and assistant principals, building capacity around outcomes training, and we also even had sub-orientation training. We trained over 850 staff members and approximately 100 substitutes. I do want to mention also tomorrow we will have 95 new teachers that will go through half-day training for the professional growth system. We are on our way. A couple of other events I wanted to mention. We have coming up in September on the 27th, a Big Brother, Big Sister mingle. We have created a video to invite our educators and classified support staff to be bigs. So we will be seeing that at the Professional Development Day, featured actually by Dr. Fruch and Dr. Hansen are both on the video. And then finally, just this last weekend, we had something really amazing. Actually, it was August 12th, where we served our homeless and foster students through a Pay It Forward with Love luau. This was amazing. It was an opportunity to join resources, and our district provided backpacks, and we had haircuts and school supplies for our students. We had over 2,000 family members attend and served 700 students. I think that's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And so you can see, board members and audience, we've had a very busy, but yet a very productive and successful summer, and we're ready to do it all over again. Very excited this time of year, as I had a chance to speak to all the new employees this morning. The neat thing about being in this profession is every year, it just feels like there's a fresh start. You know, the work might be the same, but there's this fresh start, new goals, new students, and we just couldn't be more excited. And we're positioned very, very well to continue to make progress and reach our goals. And it's just so exciting to see the strong, talented folks that are joining the RUSD team. So it's been a productive summer. And that concludes my report this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hansen. Next, we have public input, and right now I have one person from the public that wishes to address the board. If anybody else wishes to participate in public input, you can get a card and get it up front, and we'll make sure you get a chance to speak. But before I call up the one comment card I do have, we just want to give an opportunity for any of the new employees with families, or even if their families are not here, if they would like to be excused, you're more than welcome to be excused, but you're welcome to stay as well. All right, so Maria Cornejo, I believe, is she here? Welcome, thank you for being here this evening. You wish to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, so you have 3 minutes. There's a little button there on the front. There you go.
There? Okay. Good evening, members of the board, President Lee, Dr. Hansen. I'm here as an RUSD parent graduate. Come August, well, first day of school, I will no longer have to go to Staples to get the student shopping list. I won't have to prepare for the first day of school present. That was a tradition in our family. And so my husband and I, Richard, he's there in the audience, we're here to really just thank the district for providing a really solid education to our children. I want to specifically thank some teachers, starting in elementary school, which is so important for those literacy skills. I want to thank Mrs. Ballou, Mrs. Davis, Mrs. Sparkman. Those were my children's kinder and first grade teachers. And then, of course, they went on to have a great teacher in Mrs. Berkeley and Mr. Wario at Victoria Elementary. And then in the toughest time in high school, my children had excellent teachers. I want to also thank Mrs. Titus. She was an amazing, amazing counselor. Every year I got a personalized note from her, which made a huge difference because it told me that she was keeping track of my children as well, because I was keeping track of them as too. I want to thank Mr. Orovitz. He taught calculus, multivariable calculus. I mean, good grief, right? And so, I want you to know that I am a parent ambassador for RUSD. Anytime I talk to people who are out of state or thinking of moving to California or from other districts, I always do share with them that I've been so happy with my children's education. My son was a 2014 graduate, and he's doing his 4th year at UCI, thanks to the music program at Poly High School that started off in elementary school in Victoria. He's able to strive and do well, and he got a really nice scholarship. And my daughter is going on to Harvey Mudd as a math major. And again, I really think it's because of the coursework and the rigorous teaching that went on in the classroom that she was able to receive the President's Scholar, which is a full tuition scholarship for 4 years at Harvey Mudd. So I just want to let you know that I'm grateful for the board also for, I don't know how it happened, but picking up the tab for the AP testing, that was huge. But I always sent my kids off to school and I always felt safe. I thought my children were safe. And it's a sad, well, it's not sad, it's like a bittersweet moment, right? We're done, but we're happy. But I really just want to thank everybody here, administrators, everybody for really making an RUSD a top-notch district. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here and sharing that. That's what we like to hear. So we don't hear it very often, but we like to hear it when we do. So thank you for sharing that. Next, we're going to hear from our employee groups. And first, we're going to hear from Mrs. Adriana Curiel, our Riverside Council PTA. Welcome back. And great job on the video this morning.
Oh, thank you. I had to follow that. I just wanted to say thank you to Maria. Our paths have crossed in the past, and she's been an amazing parent advocate in the Pele program. When we were rolling out the Pele training at Poly High School a few years ago, she was very active, so congratulations to you and your family. Okay, so my report. Okay, well, good evening, President Lee, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. Thank you for having me. As the PTAs of RUSD have been preparing to kick off another fabulous, successful new school year, I would like to start off by thanking all of you, your staff, and those working behind the scenes on our campuses or within the district buildings for all of your continued support and allowing us to work alongside of you to better the lives of our students. Riverside Council PTA has also been very busy, and as the same as your staff members. We've been planning for the new school year and readying our team and support system for our PTA and PTSA units within our district. We began with our annual Summer Leadership Conference and Training held on Saturday, August 12th at Arlington High School. We collaborated this year with the 23rd District PTA of Riverside County, providing 15 different workshops to over 400 attendees. They're all parent volunteers from approximately a dozen different school districts. Attendees came from as far as Palm Desert to attend. Superintendent of Schools for Riverside County, Dr. Judy White, was our keynote speaker, and her speech and poem that she read left most, if not all, of our PTA leaders in Riverside County feeling very awed and inspired and motivated to serve their school communities going back into the new year. Back in our own district, Riverside Council PTA just finished up with our first association meeting of the year last Wednesday, August 16th at the RUSD Family Resource Center right next door. This is the meeting in which all of our 36 PTA and PTSA presidents from around our different campuses come to break bread, get to know each other, and speak with their fellow presidents, and as well as give or receive information as it passes up and down between the different levels of PTA. Our Reflections program is kicking off, as well as our annual membership drives on all of our campuses. So we encourage all of you to renew your membership at your school or schools of choice. This year, my focus is building bridges between all of our different campuses and building the camaraderie amongst our different presidents, and also building together the bridge amongst our different demographical representations in our parent community. We would like to invite all of you to our next General PTA Association meeting. It will be held September 20th at Liberty Elementary School at 9 a.m. And Chick-fil-A will once again be graciously providing the breakfast for that event. And they'll be partnering up with us and sharing some information about community partnerships. This will be our annual President's Principals meeting, in which we hope that you can encourage all of our principals to attend along the side of their PTA presidents. Lastly, we are excited to share with you that the Riverside Council PTA will be celebrating 90 years this coming 2018. And a lot of years of service and advocacy in the city of Riverside. And we will be hosting a 1920s themed gala on February 17th. That is a Saturday, so you will all be invited. It's going to be great, and the invitation will follow. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear, we have a pinch hitter to go with the theme from this morning. We got Ms. Aldis here in support of Dan Rudd for the CSEA Chapter 506.
Yes, it's me. No. Good evening, everybody. President Lee, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. I'd like to start off saying that we, this summer, we've had a very exciting, we went to conference. We were in Las Vegas for 5 days. It was, this year we got to bring 19 members with us of our chapter, which are, there's 9 of us here. We had 3 new members that got to go this year to see our process, and some of them were long days. We were there till 10 o'clock a lot of the nights, but we got a lot accomplished, and that's what we're there for. Like, we changed some of our state policies and voting on our state board of directors up there. So we also did have one of our own members, Nina Moore, she's at Human Resources, and she did run for a state office. She ran for the state first vice president. She may not have won, but she represented Chapter 506 and Riverside Unified very well. So we're very, very proud of her. She represented with dignity and honor. She was great. So I would also like to thank Maze Kakish, Lynn Carmen Day, and Robin Mesa for coming to conference this year. Maze and Lynn were there for a couple days, and it was really, the delegates, I think, really appreciated having them there and giving us support in what we do, and to see our process, because it can be a very long, drawn-out process. We would like to thank them for having us all for dinner on Wednesday. It was great to be able to spend time with them for a couple of hours and, just kind of share stories with everybody. So, let's see. I hate reading things from paper, and I just like, but I also would like to give a little special thanks to Robin, because she stuck out the whole week with us, and she was sitting in the audience with us for pretty much the long days that we were there. So we really appreciated that, but loved having everybody there. So, and now that everybody's coming back to work this week, it's going to be really exciting with the PD day. So I'm looking forward to that. It's the last couple of years been very exciting, and I think it's great. So we do have voting on August 30th for some of our contract issues for job reclassifications and some MOUs that are for certain provisions in our contract, and we're anticipating a good turnout for that. They've been building and building and getting a lot better than as we go on. Again, I would like to say thank you to the board and the cabinet for the support that they show, that not only the classified but to the certificated employees of this district. This is truly a district that understands that working as a team benefits the students that we serve, and I believe that. I've been with you, Riverside Unified for 30 years, and I've always think that, I love this district, working for it, and I didn't grow up here and I didn't go to school here, but I liked working here, so it was very exciting. Thank you. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Aldis. Next, we're going to hear from our subcommittee reports. And I think the only subcommittee that's going to report out is operations. Sure. Mr. Hunt?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Carrie did go to a very good high school, though, and she was a few years behind me, but we did okay, didn't we, Carrie? We did okay. The committee met on the 7th of August and had a full agenda, very well prepared by the staff, I should add. Just quickly going through a few of the items. The staff did report, and the board had approved it on July 20th meeting, our local hazard mitigation plan that had to be given to FEMA, and it was accepted. We also, and very importantly, talked about the new residential community developments, particularly that are coming into Riverside. I think the board heard earlier about the city's plan to add 4,700 new units under the state mandate. But we specifically focused on the Lake Matthews area and the High Grove area, the track maps there. And this would affect, again, Lake Matthews, High Grove, and Harrison. There's an estimated 806 elementary school students that may be generated by the housing developments that are entitled right now. This will lead to a future review by this committee, and the board has to increasing classroom capacity and quite likely even a new school in the High Grove area, the long-delayed Maxine Frost School, I guess. So we'll know more about that, but the staff is on top of it. We did direct staff and declare this with the superintendent, but we're concerned that the developer out there that is doing part of the High Grove, what's it called, the ranch, Spring Mountain, right? Or yeah, what's the name of the development? Spring Mountain Ranch, I think it's called. Yeah, and they advertise that there's a new school going to be built if you want to come buy one of their homes, though right now they're not being cooperative with our staff and helping work on that CFD. So we directed that to Ms. Kadish that, no longer Mr. Nice Guy. We can't wait around for that. We need their cooperation, or we'll take their cooperation. So we look forward to hearing more about that. Most of your consent calendar you see is dominated by change orders for Ramona High School's theater renovation project. The project is scheduled to be completed November 17th of this year. It is at, 2 weeks ago, is at 74% complete. The staff presented an update on the construction process, very impressive what's happening. Glad we did this. A couple of the items that were important, the wonderful artwork that's going to be on the side of the building that will be facing out towards Magnolia was clip art of different folks in theater and dance, et cetera. So we're going to turn that over to the new principal to make sure, working with his staff, that those graphics are actually former and present Ramona High School theater students. So we also I think it's going to be on your consent calendars next time. We propose that the pipe organ that's been there for 4 decades, I think it is now, and has been played by 4 people, that it be donated back to the company that's been taking care of it. By doing so, we'll lose a pipe organ, we'll pick up a dressing room. So we thought that to recommend to you all that would be more appropriate, and that will be on your consent calendar. As you know, Martin Luther King High School is like a lot of our schools, but particularly at Martin Luther King being so close to the intersection of Wood and Van Buren, we had instructed the staff, and they came back with some excellent ideas on to do a parking and traffic study, and they worked out this with the Riverside Traffic Engineering Department. They presented several plans. We have one that we like, that we asked for cost information and then to bring to the board, I believe, Mr. President, on September the 5th meeting to show, and I think it makes good use of the land. It would give a right in, and we need to have a left in as well, just east there of Wood, down the hill where we have our drainage pad and what we call the Burger King pad sitting out there. But it would give an entrance there that would help calm traffic, and also a proposal to build some additional parking, which will help a lot for the football games and events that are held there. So you'll see that on September the 5th to be reviewed and commented on. And then finally, believe it or not, on a day of the eclipse, a good time to announce this, the staff has moved forward with a solar energy feasibility study on those 3 schools, High Grove, Woodcrest, and Lake Matthews, that are not in the Riverside Public Utility jurisdiction, but they're in Southern California Edison, which makes them much more feasible to do solar on. Under California Government Code 4217.12, a governing body such as ours, local government, can forego the RFP process and go sole source. So the staff has put out an RFQ, request for qualifications, to do a power purchase agreement, and they will bring that before us by the end of September for us to review. One of the main things, of course, is that under these agreements, you're allowed to, you lock in the rate increase, usually at 1.5%, 2%, something like that, with your solar provider. And that helps really begin to defray the cost as the years go on, because the Edison cost has been on average at 3.5% to 5% per year. Edison's becoming really a delivery type of mechanism more than a generator. So we can only see those costs going up. And Dr. Farouk, anything to add to that? Right. That's our report. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Next, we have the consent. These items that are listed on the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be enacted by the board in one motion unless anybody wishes to pull.
So moved.
Move to approve. Second, Dr. Farouk. All right. Let me see if I can remember how to do this machine. All right. Nope. Sorry, guys. All right. Go ahead and vote. All right. It carries. Thank you. All right. Next, I think we have a couple presentations. All right. We're on to the action agenda. Item number 1. Adopt resolution number 2017/18-05 declaring September to be Attendance Awareness Month. Mr. Walker.
President Lee, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. Before you this evening is Resolution 2017-1803 declaring September as Attendance Awareness Month. By the adoption of this resolution, we stand with the nation in directing our attention and focus on reducing the chronic absenteeism, thereby providing children an equitable opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially. With the support of the Board of Education in reestablishing the positions of the Pupil Services Department through the LCAP, Dr. McGuire, his staff, supported the leadership of the schools to reduce chronic absenteeism from 12.9% in 2014 and 15 to 9.4% in 16-17. We will continue efforts to reduce that number as we work with schools and families during the 17-18 school year. At this time, I ask the board to take action on this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. We have a motion to approve by Mrs. Lockdawson. Do we have a second? Second by Dr. Farouk. And voting's open. One more person has to click in. Mr. Hunt?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
All right, that also carries. Thank you, Mr. Walker. 5-0.
Thank you very much.
All right, second item on action agenda is another resolution for the board to consider adopting regarding rail safety awareness. Hello, Dr. McGuire.
President Lee, Dr. Hanson, and Board of Education. As you know, our district is crisscrossed by railroads, and we have some safety concerns. And I would like to have Lana Goffman, our CWA manager, who helps me with safety and security, come up and talk about the resolution before you tonight.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Dr. Hanson, Board President, Mr. Lee, and board members, I'm sure we can all agree that rail safety is important for our students and community. To assist schools in getting the message out about rail safety, Riverside Unified has partnered with California Operation Lifesaver to recognize National Rail Safety during the month of September. With more than 70 crossings and 128 trains per day going through Riverside, it is important to reinforce rail safety. That is why I am bringing forward a resolution for you to take action on rail safety to keep the message going throughout the year. See tracks, think train. With that said, I have here with me Sarah Logan, Assistant State Coordinator with California Operation Lifesaver, and we'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
What do you have here? That's my question.
This is a railroad crossing that Lana had.
Well, I actually borrowed it from somebody. I saw it at the co-administrators meeting last week, and I asked where it came from, and Dr. Charity Plaxton Hennings had it as a leftover birthday decoration from her son, and I just thought since we were talking rail safety, it would be appropriate. I thought it was cute.
We could plug it in if you want.
Well, I didn't want to fuss with it. I think it took longer to get it plugged in than to get it.
Mr. Lee, I have a question.
Yes, go
But
ahead.
my board is not cleared. It's still a voting board, so I cannot.
Yeah,
seem
me
to-
too.
I don't know what's wrong with it. It just won't clear.
It's user error, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyway, what I was going to ask you is, we have had some serious accidents in Riverside with train crossings, and I was wondering, when you're going into the schools for the safety, is it just a message you're sending? I mean, how are we going to get this idea across to these kids, especially at a couple schools that are right close to those train tracks? Is it just verbiage? I mean, what are we doing?
So we're trying a lot of different things, and the reason why we wanted this to become a resolution and come so kids have to learn rail safety on a yearly basis is because I compare it to the same thing as a seatbelt. When we were younger, we didn't wear a seatbelt. It was something that was learned, and then as we got older, it could become second nature, so our kids automatically get in and put their seatbelt on. Unfortunately, rail safety is not the same. We have more and more trains that are going faster. People are living closer to them, traversing across them, whether it's to get to school or to work. And so unfortunately, it's just that they're not educated on it. So what we're trying to do is come in when they're kindergartners and start talking to them about rail safety. Tracks, you might have put coins on the tracks back when you were young, and that's something that you cannot do. That quarter or nickel or whatever you put on there shoots out like a bullet. If you've ever taken a watermelon seed and pinched it and you see how far it goes, that's what a rail wheel does on the track. Only about a dime size is what's touching on each wheel when it's on there.
Wow.
So that's not very much, steel on steel, so it shoots out like a bullet. And I do have one more thing to add. This is something that's fantastic with RCTC they're partnering with us as well. They're committed to promoting rail safety and have adopted a formal ongoing rail safety program with the city of Riverside, and then they work with us. So it's something, Riverside has been a star community, and we are using it to go to a lot of other communities as well. So thank you very much for
Thank you.
believing in this.
Mr. Hunt still has a comment or a question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ladies, for coming down tonight. As Mrs. Alvey indicated, there has been some very sad and tragic things that have happened, particularly over by Arlington High. So, and as a Riversider, and all of us, I moved here when I was 8. Everybody else probably was born here, and we're all happy there's not as many horns. But as a school board member, I'm still concerned because when I come up on that track at one at Madison, right there, and then right there by the little store, and then the other one there at Arlington, it just has signs that say "Watch for trains." And I'm not sure, do those gates actually close to stop the pedestrian, or is it just the signs that say "Watch for trains," which kids certainly would pay attention to?
In Riverside is actually number 8 for trespassing. I think it has gone up, that we go by the FRA statistics, so those lag about 3 or 4 months.
Trespassing?
Trespassing, so you can't stop them. And then grade crossing, Riverside has been doing a lot of great things with grade separations, and they were number 4, but that is tending to go down. So that's definitely a positive. We're out there just educating the students, making sure that they know, don't go on the railroad tracks. It's private property. A lot of people don't realize that railroad property is private property. They think that we have schools where they'll send their track team. You go run on the tracks, there's nobody there. And that's definitely not something that you want. Riverside, you guys see trains a lot. Up in the high desert, they don't see trains as often, but there's still a lot of trains. And so it's just something, everybody is transient, they move around. So it's just important to make sure that you're aware of being safe around those railroad tracks, what you can and can't do. When that gate's down, that means road closed, whether it's to a pedestrian or to a vehicle.
But don't they, thank you, I understand that, but, the young man, 6 years ago, I think it was, he had his headphones on, and so does that gate, that little black gate, does it swing forward? And I know it stops me in my car, but is there a way that the pedestrian can be blocked? Is there a mechanism that can come out that the pedestrian walk at least makes the 15-year-old listening to his rap music instead of what he's supposed to be doing, and that's what you do when you're 15? Is there any way that y'all can be worked out that sort of thing happens?
They do have technology engineering where there are gates. I know that down in Orange County, they have some pedestrian gates. That's something that you would have to work with the engineering department on. There are certain parameters that you have to have in order to get a quiet zone. And so
the engineering department of the trains or
engineering department between the city of Riverside and the FRA, the
Well, I would
California
like-
Public Utilities Commission, and then you'd be able to talk to them about, can we put gates up to stop that? We have gone ahead and put C-Tracks Think Train cement decals in the city of Riverside. We have the banners. When we're out there talking to students, we're talking, the younger kids, we're talking about trespassing. We're talking to them, if there's multiple tracks, that means there's multiple trains. And unfortunately, that's what happened with that student. He had his headphones on, saw the one train go by and walked and didn't realize that there was another train coming. So that's something that we're trying to really instill into their head too, that multiple tracks mean multiple trains. Don't go until you can both those gate arms are completely up and that light stops flashing. If you go, whether you're a car or a person, you can get ticketed for running a red light. If you notice that very last one is a solid red.
Well, I would, Mr. President, when you meet with the superintendent, what I would like to see happen, thank you for that report, and thank you, Dr. McGuire, for bringing it forward, but I would like to have Dr. McGuire look at our crossings, where the one at Arlington, the one at Madison, where I'm sure there's many where kids are walking to school, and tell us what there is there as far as physical impediment for the young person, because all the good information and speeches to them isn't going to do much good, in my opinion. And see if there are places that aren't covered now, can we meet with the city and ask them for what they can do? This city has worked very hard for the last 20 years to get the quiet zones. I love that. That's important to our community. But let's make sure the crossings are the most stringent we can make them, and most prohibitive for those young people, because it just needs to be. So if that could, when you all talk, I'd appreciate that, if the board's okay with that. Thank you very much for your report, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, ladies, appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Hunt, for your comments. So with that, do we have a motion to approve the policy?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq. Please vote. All right, that carries 5-0. Thank you, board. All right, next, under reports and discussions, we have Mr. Walker back to talk about the status of district safety and security procedures.
President Lee, Dr. Hanson, members of the board, tonight you will hear a report that provides an overview of the RUSD safety and security policies and plans, as well as safety and security preparation and implementation within RUSD. With the incident in San Bernardino last year and other concerning incidents across the United States in public schools, RUSD has taken steps to increase safety and ensure that existing board policies are implemented. I would like to share with you that the presentation you will receive this evening has been shared with the site principals across the district. The presentation included opportunities for school leaders to engage in active communication with Pupil Services Department leadership. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Gary McGuire, Director of Pupil Services, and Mrs. Lana Goffman, the Child Welfare and Attendance Manager, to the podium.
Good evening again. Our focus, you can see this evening, is on safety and security. And as we look at this and the status where we're at, we want to emphasize the fact that safety is basically a cyclical process. It starts with the policies and procedures we put in both at the district level and at the site levels. It identifies the people who are part of the safety and security process. It looks and puts together plans that try to deal with all the contingencies.
Dr. McGuire, can you talk right into that mic?
I'm sorry,
for me?
I was waiting for Lana to come up next.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I don't like hearing my voice. So anyhow, it also talks about the plans we put into place to deal with what we know and what we don't know, what contingencies might come up, and preparing, practicing, drilling, doing things like that, and predicting, based on all of those things, what kinds of plans do we put together for the future to make things better. Then we start all over again with the process. So we'll start first with policy, and the board has been very proactive in the area of safety and policy, and we appreciate the action that the board has taken in that regard. This look starts from when I began in 2015, so it's a 2-year look here. So we've got conduct. We talked about conduct, student conduct. We looked at bullying, and you passed a bullying policy. The board also passed the non-discrimination, harassment, and intimidation policy in 2015. The board did the comprehensive safety plans, which includes both the district plans and the site plans, which have to be renewed every year. The child abuse prevention and reporting was also something the board took action on. The board took action on search and seizure in this era of laws and case laws. What do we do when somebody has something they shouldn't have at school? And that policy addresses that. The board took action ahead of the state, even on suicide prevention, and we've got an active plan in place for that. The board just recently passed Board Policy 1250, was visitors and outsiders. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And also district facility security. So that's just a synopsis of what the board has done thus far proactively with plans.
All right, our people, identifying the people that are responsible for the different areas. We have our Board of Education, of course, our superintendent, and our assistant superintendent of pupil services and special ed. Pupil services team, we have 85 campus supervisors, 5 SROs, and RPD, Riverside Police Department, and an MOU with them. We have our site principals and our assistant principals. We have M&O and risk management, threat, suicide, crisis teams, our site district safety committees, our site emergency response teams, our canine detection contract that we have every year, our teachers and classified staff, and our first responders. For the plans, we're creating plans for multiple contingencies. The district comprehensive safety plan is updated every year, and this year we're going to, this year it's in draft form, and then once we finalize, as you saw tonight, we had a lot of new hires. And once we finalize everybody, then I'm going to plug some people back into the district safety plan. And then we have our site safe school and disaster response plans. Those are updated every year too, and this year we're doing a complete audit on them. We've added mandatory intruder active shooter drills. That's going to be done once each semester. We've added a requirement for monthly radio checks. We've added suggested emergency supplies for that. Also, we have the threat suicide protocols that are updated based on the after action reviews and the feedback from the safety crisis trainings and teams that we receive. We have their emergency communication protocol and flow chart that gets updated whenever we need to update with changes. And then we also have our RPD Student Threat Assessment Response Protocol, which is another word for STAR, or the Students with Guns Protocol, which most of you are familiar with that term, I believe. For preparation, we're preparing for events through training, practice, drills, and collection of resources. We have our active shooter training and drills, and we have ALICE is one of our trainings that we use, and we're also looking at another resource that it's not quite as detailed as ALICE and as costly. We have our threat, suicide, and assessment trainings. We have our campus supervisor mandated trainings and meetings. We have our PROACT, which is the professional assault crisis training that provides principles to de-escalate those students with assaultive behaviors. We have our after action reviews. We have our restorative practices trainings that Dr. McGuire and myself have been here talking about with you in the past. We have our prepare training, and our prepare stands for P for the prevent and prepare for psychological trauma, or R for reaffirm physical health and perceptions of security and safety. The E is for evaluate psychological trauma. The R is for provide interventions, and the R is respond to psychological needs. And lastly, the E to examine the effectiveness of our crisis prevention and intervention. We have our resources for sites, which is mainly, we have a lot of information on haiku. Almost everything you can think of is on haiku for our sites. And that was it on the preparation side. I'll let Dr. McGuire take it back over.
So based on that, and we're coming around to the top of the cycle again, so we get after action reviews, we do the reviews of the plans, we do everything. And we put that together, and we need to predict what we need to do as we move forward into the new years and beyond, especially since things change so fast around us. So one of the things that we are going to do with that is we want to develop a comprehensive multi-year blueprint for safety as we look forward and move further into the 21st century. That we have a district safety committee that does meet annually as required by law. We're going to convene them again this fall and begin looking at the data we have and what we need to do. They're going to create some focus area recommendations as we move forward. They're going to develop what is the cost for some of these recommendations that we feel are necessary for district safety and security. Then develop an action plan. What's that going to look like? Prioritize the events and the time order for that, and possible funding sources for that plan. And then develop a multi-year implementation plan. So that's the cycle. It takes us back to the top when we start all over again.
Dr. McGuire, Mrs. Allaby has a question.
My question is, are we responsive to what's going on in the country at any given time? For instance, say what's going on in North Carolina and all the different, do we watch what's going on? And are we trying to get the word out to our schools to be conscious of certain kinds of mitigating factors that might be affecting student safety?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
In fact, as I was doing this, we were doing this presentation Friday, I sat back down at my seat for the rest of the principals meeting and noticed an email from the Association of Curriculum and Supervision Development on that very question. And we've been talking about what we need to do. They had wonderful, wonderful resources, and every principal and assistant principal and district administrator in the district got that email today with some proactive things we can do in the classroom dealing with hate and violence associated with hate. We've been proactive in the area of immigrants and awareness of our immigrant students as well. We have resources that we've talked to them about in training as well.
Mr. Hunt?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. McGuire. And I think it's a good question, Mrs. Allaby. You know, I got a call the other day, just related from Rabbi Fuss here in town of an adjoining school district asking for my help, and I did reach out to that superintendent, where the sort of white supremacist things that we unfortunately saw occurring in our nation and the neo-Nazis and all was taking place at a high school here in Riverside. And several of the Jewish parents were very concerned. There was a lot of Nazi type things. So I think we have to be prepared for that. These things are going to happen. I'm glad you are, Dr. McGuire. I want to ask a couple of questions. One is about our SROs. I think I mentioned to you that in a not too long ago meeting Dr. Farouk and I had on operations, and it was just a minor thing working with Poly High, and we found out, and we were saying, well, why can't the SRO respond to that? And we found out, though these SROs, I believe, Ms. Kadesh, we pay for them completely, we're supposed to have 100% of their time. We found there are several of the SROs that are also on the SWAT team, that are also on the administrative team or something. I want to be sure that the contracts that we have with Riverside Police Department for our SROs ensure that the SRO is 100% assigned and their job is not bifurcated. So that's just my comment. I hope that is, we made that clear to Ms. Kadesh, I believe, and hope that's clear to you, and maybe report back to us. I'd also like to ask you about these check-in systems and your thoughts on those, or yours, ma'am. Right now, if you go to City Hall, you have to put your name in and get a picture taken and all that. But I like this, and I understand there's one now that they've been around for a while that have a, you take your California driver's license and you swipe it, and it can pick up all sorts of things. I'd like to have a report back, Dr. Hanson, on what that would cost us to install those in all of our schools. I find it, and it's, again, I don't do that at City Hall, you just type in your name and that sort of thing, but I feel good about doing it. I think it protects the people that work there. There's sometimes folks who are angry, whatever, with the government these days. We have a much higher standard. We need to be taking care of our little people. So I would like us to look into that. But Dr. McGuire, ma'am, what is your thoughts on those apparatuses?
When the District Safety Committee met in the spring, we vetted two of those companies. The one that got the City Hall contract and the one that a lot of school districts are using. So we've looked at that. We got some price estimates on that as well to see how it fits and with our culture and our community is the next step in that blueprint process.
Okay, so you'll be bringing that back?
That is one of the things we bring back.
Ma'am, did you want to add anything? Or?
No,
All right.
I was just shaking my head in agreement because we just did that in May.
All right. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Dr. Farouk?
Thank you, President Lee, and thank you all for your proactive leadership on providing our student safety. My question is are there protocols or support regarding how mental health related services that are being provided within our RUSD community, how they're interfacing with safety and these other efforts?
But one of the things that Lana talked about was the prepare training, which Dr. Laxton Henning has been very proactive in doing. And as we saw, for instance, at the incidents that happened at Liberty, that team was there almost instantly, providing the social, emotional, and mental health supports that they needed, following the prepare protocols. So the protocols are in place, and we have a rotating team, emergency response team, that each, is it 2 weeks, 4 weeks? You want to speak more to that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Well, what's the emergency response team is
Sure.
on a cycle? You've got like 3 or 4 teams?
That's correct. We have 3 crisis response teams that we do on a rotating basis. And each of those do a week of call on every month, and then they rotate through that. And additionally, this year, what we are reinstituting, a practice that we've had in the past, to add to that is that our crisis teams, so that they do not become inundated and their sites suffer, is that part of the plan for our school sites is if a principal or site administrator needs to have assistance with a suicide intervention or some sort of threat assessment, if their school psychologist, their SAP counselor, or school counselor is not available, we're also rotating our SAP counselors and our school psychologists through a rotation schedule. So everybody takes 3 to 4 days per school year that they're on call as backup to a school site if that particular school site is at a training or any of their school site mental health team is not available to take those phone calls.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk. Is this plan designed only, these procedures only to be, are designed only to be shared internally, or is there an external component to that as well?
But they're all public documents, so we do have the threat assessment and those things published. The sites are supposed to have their comprehensive safety plans available for the public as well, and they do.
And I know a lot of this information is really detailed and probably not entirely something the public's going to be interested in. But since, in a crisis situation especially, I think it's important for the public to have some kind of understanding of what our procedures are. And I think about what happened at King High School with that bomb threat, and you had parents, driving every which way trying to get on campus to get their kid, which can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing. But having some kind of partnership with the communication team to figure out how do you get this information out in a strategic way that's pertinent to parents.
And we have worked with Justin's department and had conversations around that.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, I think that's really important. And two, Mr. Hunt brought up the idea of doing like key cards, and I'm not saying that's a bad idea. Probably is a good idea. But as we put cameras on campus, and as we close campuses to parents after the first week of school, and now potentially we're looking into swiping a card for parents to get access to our school. I think the messaging is really important because our schools are turning into fortresses. And that's sad that we need to protect students in that way. But we don't want to give the appearance that people are not welcome on our campuses. So that's why I think that communications piece is really important, that, hey, parents, we want you involved. We want to keep our kids safe. So whatever that messaging look like, whatever that marketing looks like, however we get that out, I don't want our schools not only to have the appearance of fortresses, but also like gatekeepers and key cards and all of that too. And I know it's a challenge, and I don't envy you for having to come up with solutions for that, but we want parents to be involved on campus, and want to make it accessible to them too.
Thank you. We agree.
Yeah, I know you do. Thank you, Dr. McGuire. Anybody else? All right, thank you to you and your team. We appreciate it. All right, next I think we're going to hear from Dr. Lewis on the Legacy Program, which is all about our English learners and our foster kids.
Good evening, President Lee, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. I have the privilege tonight to present, I believe for the first time, on our Legacy Program that began last fall. Thank you. So Legacy starts with a mission. The mission is for English learners and foster youth to do whatever we need to do to support their academic success, so when they leave, they have every option available to them, whether that be college, career, or world readiness. The overall goal is to work with our students to make sure that they are A through G complete at graduation. Secondary goal is to make sure that all of the requirements for graduation are met. So tonight we're going to cover those. So the initial work began modeled after the Heritage Program. Knowing the success we had working with student groups, we began approximately late October, early November, working towards a Legacy Program. The first thing we did is we hired a counselor in special assignment. I believe Jan is here this evening. And Jan came in and got Legacy up and running, working with all of our schools. The first complete year we're kicking off as soon as school starts, and it's committed with our English learners and our foster youth, doing whatever we can to help them be prepared to not only graduate, but be A through G complete. And we started by allocating additional staff. So it's done in FTE sections based on enrollment. So you'll see as the presentation, King is the only school that has 0.2. Arlington, North, Poly, and Ramona all have 0.4. That equates to either 1 or 2 sections at their schools. What they do with the additional staffing is they do everything from field trips, transcript analysis, parent meetings, one-on-one student meetings. They build that relationship. They build the time with the students and the families to make sure that their needs are met and they're moving forward. So what we have for you here is an overview of our data. Schools listed to the left, and across the top you'll see we broke it down into the different groups of reporting. So total ELs, 9 through 11, the count of students. Then we look at foster youth, grades 9 to 11. And then we look at our seniors. These are our English learners at their senior year, And you'll notice we did not have any foster youth students last year who were seniors. To the right breaks down our data. So you'll see in 2017, we had A through G complete graduates listed by high school in the number. To the right, we didn't have any foster youth seniors. And the next column, we look at graduates. They graduated high school, met the requirement, but they did not quite fulfill the A through G requirement. We did have students who received their certificate of completion through special education. And far right, you'll notice the number of non-grads that we have listed by high school. It was the beginning. It was a little over a semester worth of work. We are very excited for coming up this year and getting a full year to work with everybody involved. So the next component, what do we do? Legacy events covered a range of activities, starting with parent meetings, explaining how we report grades, college tours to open up the doors, ACT, SAT registration. You'll see some other things listed. In the bottom, I believe you're all there, we ended with our first ever legacy graduation event celebrating our working with, I believe that was held at Central Middle School as a celebration. So 17-18, our focus. We're going to continue to work on the transcript analysis. We know making sure that our students are in the right classes and academically successful is number one, to make sure they're A through G complete. Working with all of their families, identifying, building that relationship, showing students and parents, navigating that process and showing them what's possible. Lastly, monitoring interventions. We know we can intervene, we know we can remediate, but how do we do that targeted and making sure we know where every student is by name and by need. And last, looking at cohorts. As students progress through, making sure that every cohort of students is receiving what they need to be academically successful. And last, the goals of legacy for 17-18. Obviously, our number one goal is to increase the number of students we have enrolling in college or university. Second is making sure they're A through G complete. If not A through G complete, for whatever reason, definitely making sure they meet the graduation requirements. And lastly, our family engagement and outreach, working with those contacts at each high school to reach out to parents and build that relationship.
Dr. Lewis has a couple of questions. Dr. Farouk?
Thank you, President Lee. And thank you, Dr. Lewis, for all your efforts on this. And the Heritage Program is a very noteworthy program to try to replicate its success here. My question is what was the thought process for the Legacy Program to group English learners and foster youth together in terms of these goals and this program?
It's a great question. We internally have asked the same questions, and what my best understanding is when we began the process, we looked at unduplicated students that were most at risk. And when Legacy was created, it was what group of students do we need to make sure are being successful in meeting their needs? And that's why when they came through, they had English learners at high school tied together with foster youth. Answer your question?
I mean, I would prefer to have more information, but I can get that information maybe outside the board meeting. That's fine.
Kathy, can I?
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting to put those two groups together because you would think they might need some different kinds of help. So
correct.
It'd be interesting. First of all, in what way does it differ from Heritage, or is it exactly like Heritage?
They are mirroring off of what Heritage, the relationships of students, the monitoring, the transcript analysis, very, very similar.
Everything is the same?
Very similar,
Okay,
correct.
everything's the same. Then the next thing is, do we educate our counselors? How do we make sure that we catch those kids? Do we have some sort of training program or?
So we are so excited to have Jan, and she's behind me. That is the work. We know our counselors with our students. That is our number one touch. Jan began getting involved last year, and that is a focus of this year, making sure that she has the relationship with counselors are understanding the process, and we're moving forward. Absolutely.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you.
I was going to comment on Dr. Farouk's question. I've been asking the same question for a year, and I haven't heard a real good reason other than it was like, okay, well, we don't have anything for them, so let's add it. And to me, the needs of a English language learner are so unique, completely different than the needs of foster youth. And not that I think we need a whole plan and create a new name and brand for foster youth, especially when the group is fairly small. And it's a little bit concerning to me, and I'm sure this is just a trend that's national, but that we had no foster youths graduate or get into the 12th grade. To me, that just means they dropped out right in 10th or 11th grade, so they didn't even make it. So it seems we need to keep developing, the success that we've seen in Legacy. And it was great to see the achievements that we witnessed at the Legacy celebration in such a short amount of time. And I think with time and with the right dedicated personnel to those students, we can mirror the achievement that the Heritage Program has seen. And that took a few years now to where we are to see that work. And again, I think the needs of our African American students are completely different than the needs of our English language learners. So I still think we need to find something that is going to satisfy those needs of the foster youth. Some kind of a specialized, very hands-on approach that grabs these kids and probably middle schoolers sooner and help them so that they get to the 12th grade. But I have not heard one good argument as to why. And I've asked Dr. Hansen, I've asked Lynn Carmen-Day, now we're asking you. And I'm not trying to put blame or point fingers, be upset. It just doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't sound like it makes sense to anybody else. So I think we need to look at that.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? Anything? Jan, did you want to comment on anything? Okay. Yes. Thank you for your work and being the pioneer in this program. We appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you.
All right, next, third and final report for the evening. We're going to hear about the 12 success indicators from our RUSD instructional guide. And yes, Ms. Lynn Carmen-Day, you're up.
Good evening, Board President Lee, Dr. Hansen, esteemed board members. Tonight, you will be provided with a preliminary overview of district data. You may remember approximately a year ago, we presented data specific to two data areas: the Smarter Balance Assessment in both English Language Arts and Mathematics. Tonight, we will be reporting on 12 success indicators articulated in the Guide for Instructional Direction. These indicators allow us to have a more comprehensive look at the district performance through various data points. As introduced a year ago, we are utilizing our indicators through Fulham's systems reform approach that focuses on building capacity around outcomes, ensuring the very best first instruction, leveraging collaboration, and increasing systemness. Tonight's presentation will provide initial district numbers, preliminary. Later, when the data is confirmed, it will be disaggregated by student groups. And finally, an analyst will dig into causes and cures, as coined by former Assistant Sup Renee Hill. Here you see the 12 success indicators, which were modeled after well-respected systems within the successful districts of Long Beach Unified School District and Whittier Union High School District, well known for their work in closing the achievement gap. The indicators were also vetted through assessment experts from key data systems and the County Office of Education. The 12 success indicators were published prior to the state dashboard. In general, our indicators mirror that state dashboard. For example, you will see attendance. Our definition for attendance is average daily attendance, or what we call ADA, whereas the state is focusing on chronic absenteeism. The rationale for that was to incorporate all attendance for students. And of course, we still are attending to chronic absenteeism. That's one example. Another example is where you see our local indicators. So that would be reading by third grade, as well as early numeracy and student engagement. Those are local indicators. One other area where you see states, college career indicator. It's packaged, whereas we have 3 separate indicators: advanced placement in IB, dual college enrollment, and also and also the career technical education. As conversations regarding our indicators evolve, we will take these differences into account. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Lewis, Assistant Super of Curriculum and Instruction, and Dr. Gale, Research Assessment and Evaluation Director, to present the data to you. Thank you.
Good evening, President Lee, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. As Mrs. Carmende shared, tonight we're going to look at our 12 success indicators. On the slide looking in front of you, you'll notice there are only 10. These are our 10 indicators that are reflected on percentages. I'm going to give you a brief overview of how to read as we go through. The pattern will stay the same. We're going to report 3 years of data, 14, 15, 15, 16, 16, 17, reading left to right. And those are the percentages of students in each of those groups. You'll notice as you get through A through G and grad rate, the colors change. They're light blue. That's because we're still waiting for official data back from the state, so those will be not reported this evening. The 11th and 12th indicator, these are reported as numbers. So the reason they're separated, we have the indicator that reports AP and IB enrollment, as well as dual college enrollment. And you'll see we have AP reported for 3 years, and all we did is separate that out so you could see it compared to IB. They're together as the indicator. On the right, you'll see we've separated articulated and dual enrollment. Again, as the indicator, they are combined, but we did that just so you can see the difference.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes, sir.
So for the AP reported number, is that unique students, or if students enrolled in more than one class, are they counted more than once?
So we'll get to that later, but to answer your question, it's number of students that enrolled in at least one class.
On this and following indicators, what you will see is one slide per indicator. You will see a definition as we've defined it as the LCAP success indicators. You will have, again, 3 years of data if we have them available. If they're preliminary, that means we have sufficient information to go ahead and report out. If it's pending, we are still waiting for enough information to get an estimate. If you see from the right, you will see a lined blue bar. That is a target for this year. And then basically making the comparison, you will see whether or not we've hit our target for the year. For attendance, the average percentage of students attending school each day in a given year, this is our ADA. These are actual district percentages for average daily attendance from 2014-15 through the last year.
Our next indicator is reading by third. What we're looking for with this indicator is, are students able to read? Are they gaining the skills that allow them to access core curriculum? And you'll notice that's measured by the middle of year DIBELS. So you can see again, we have showed 15, 16, 16, 17 towards the target. On this is the only graph you're going to see end of year. So far right, we included that just so you can see a comparison between 16, 17, middle of the year to what it looks like at the end of the year to show that growth. Next, we look at early numeracy. Early numeracy is a new indicator that we've defined, so we're showing a baseline. And what we're looking for in early numeracy is, do our students have the prerequisite skills in mathematics, covering problem solving, computation, algebraic thinking, to access, again, looking at core curriculum. That's assessed, you'll recall we don't have a state assessment for K2, so this is another indicator making sure our students are progressing with numeracy. Functioning as a baseline, next year we will again identify a target and see our success.
The next 2 slides are on our smarter balanced assessments. These are summative assessments. And basically we're looking at the top 2 achievement levels, standard met and standard exceeded. These are the percent of students who met or exceeded grade level standards, and this is where we first see our students applying skills to grade level mastery. These results show what percentage, the Smarter Balance assessments are given between April and June on grades 3 through 8 and 11. And as with the other, we have a preliminary results from our summative in June, but the CDE has yet to release the official results. We expect them by end of August or early September. This one here shows our results for the mathematics. Again, it's standard met or standard exceeded. This one here is on our English learner proficiency. And if you're familiar with the old annual measurable achievement objective, where we're looking at performance and improvement on CELT in 1 year's progress, or maintaining proficiency if you're at level 4. And basically what you have here, this is one part of 2 when we're looking at English learner proficiency as the state definition. We're working with the state to go ahead and identify a technical formula which we can go ahead and do comparisons with other districts, but at this time we have these in 2 pieces. The CELT, which you see here, and then the reclassification rate, which you see here. And this is where students actually, once they complete and become fluent English proficient on the CELT, they also meet other criteria where they can actually exit the English learner program.
We have a couple of questions. Just pause on the presentation. Mrs. Allaby.
Just quickly, so with the Smarter Balance tests, can you help me again? Tell me which grades are tested for that.
Absolutely. They're grades 3 through 8 and also grade 11.
So when I see a number like 34%, you're telling me that's 34% of the kids that were tested in all those grades
Correct.
that met or exceeded the standard?
Correct. So
Got it.
basically they have the top 2 achievement levels.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding.
Thank you.
What is the methodology that you guys use to determine your targets?
Everyone's looking at me. So initially, all of this is linked closely with the local control accountability plan, and we are expected to set targets. So initially, it really was program by program that we had asked the lead for the programs to set rigorous targets. This prompted communication or discussion around the idea of how do we make it statistically more relevant and better targets. So that's the conversation that we're currently having for next year targets.
And I don't want that to be construed as, that we should not be as ambitious in terms of what we're striving for. I just think it'd be helpful to know what the thought process for that is.
Thank you.
So our next indicator covers career pathway enrollment. And for this indicator, we're defining that by CTE course enrollment. So what you'll see, there's a gap between 14-15 and 15-16. I'll just take a second to clarify. So in 14-15 to 15-16, how we were identifying students and the methodology of reporting changed. So in 14-15, it was a reporting procedure that we on our end were getting cleaned up and getting prepared to report accurately. So that's where you'll notice the jump to 15-16. When the change occurred, 15-16, that is the accurate representation of students enrolled into a CTE course. Now we're going to break down AP and IB enrollment. You'll notice the light blue are looking at students in grades 9 through 12 that are enrolled in one or more AP or IB course. On top, we're looking at IB, which is at North.
So any 8th graders that are in AP would not reflect in these numbers?
Correct. Correct. And to answer your question earlier, these are, we are not duplicating students. So if you're in 1 or 5, it's 1. Next, we moved on to dual college enrollment. And again, if you recall, back to an earlier presentation, we're looking at articulated and dual enrollment, having that college experience and college credit. For the purpose of our graph, we've separated the two. In 15-16, we had approximately 213 students that were taking articulated courses. 16-17, we had approximately 500 students taking an articulated course, and that's when we began our dual enrollment classes with RCC at both Ramona and North with 67 students, and our target was set at 500.
On this one, you will see A through G, or the UCCSU eligibility, and this is where students go ahead and fulfill their distributions of A through G courses, and they get a 2.0 and basically a C or better in each of the courses. As with some of the other information, we are waiting for enough information to go ahead and make a prediction from the state. On the next one, you will see our graduation rate. And just to recall, this one here is based on graduates, special ed completers, continuing students who are fifth-year seniors and longer, and dropouts. It's based on a class cohort. And so what you see again, we are waiting for other information on our dropouts and see where they've enrolled in other districts before we can make a prediction. We expect that the rate to increase because in our summer program, for instance, we had graduated 80 students in the summer school. That's about 2.5% of the student graduating class.
Mrs. Ali? Oh, okay, good.
Yep. This one here is on student engagement. This is based on the student Gallup poll, which is given in the fall. In 2015-16, they added a new metric, which was focused on career and financial literacy. This is based on a voluntary student survey to all students in grades 5 through 12. Parents have to agree and students take it. And let's see, we expect to have it again this year, but to be able to disaggregate by student groups.
How many people participated in that survey?
Approximately 18,000.
Oh, sounds pretty good. Good data set.
This slide summarizes where we are today with the data we know about the 12 LCAP success indicators that we've defined in our monitoring. The 6 that are in green show where we have increased from last year. The percentages or the numbers show the increases from prior year. These are hard numbers that we know of. The 2 that are in yellow show decreases from last year. They're in smarter balance, but I will say this, the way that the state has looked at the results, there's likely to be a recalibration and then more results coming in, what they used to call a scale calibration factor. So we expect changes in these 2 indicators statewide. The 4 that are white, that are either pending or baseline data, when the pending data becomes available in the next month or so, it will be shared with the board. For the baseline, we will go ahead and work collaboratively to identify the targets to be set.
My question is, it does show that the English learner proficiency was up this little tiny bit, but then when you take the English learner reclassification and the dip in that, why aren't you considering those as part of the whole? In other words, why? I don't see that as one of your summaries.
The reason is because that's rolled up into one indicator, and my department is working with the California Department of Ed to get a technical definition that we can use the formulas to actually combine those 2 to get the rate. We separated them just so that you would see the 2 parts that we would have to pull together to get the rate.
Okay.
For now, it's
So
just
it's
a
still
holding place. Correct.
Pending.
Correct. We
Okay.
had no way to go ahead and calculate without being off. And
Okay.
instead of giving you erroneous data, we thought to give you these 2 which are accurate and based on state-released results.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Alvey. Mr. Hunt?
I just wanted to understand, just on that, and I was just going back and looking at, your AP over IB is a plus 48. Why is it in the yellow if it went up? I thought you said the ones your net changes.
Oh, you have the old one there on the version? So if you actually look at the PowerPoint here,
Oh, well,
there was a correction.
I have the one on my,
Okay.
that's with my agenda, so, okay, thank you.
Yep.
I didn't look up there.
Oh, that's a good catch. We noticed this morning that for the audience, you see the AP/IB plus 48 is green. In the board's PowerPoint, it's yellow. And so we noticed that this morning. Mr. Hunton made the changes, so thank you.
Good catch. In summary, with our guide for instructional direction, we have our 12 indicators. Tonight was just a brief overview of how our students are doing. If you can recall, we have 6 indicators where we have seen progress. We have 4 that we are either waiting on data or have remained consistent, and we have 2 that have decreased this year. As we begin to get our official results, as we begin to get the data back on our indicators that we did not have tonight, at your discretion, we'll bring back further analysis of any of the indicators that you would like, or also represent the data that you did not have for you this evening. Questions, comments?
Yeah, so my question is, reviewing all this in cabinet meetings and other district meetings, what's the talk around the table? What are the takeaways from this? What are we going to do with this data?
I can tell you my new role and what my perspective is, and then I'm happy to have Mrs. Carmen Day weigh in. We have a lot of work to do. We've seen a lot of great success. We have a lot of great programs going in the right direction. We've seen growth, we've seen work, we've seen plans, we've seen professional development. The needle is moving in the work that we are doing. 2 things from my perspective. 1, recognizing we have a lot of work to do. We have to spend time refining and examining process, looking and examining our programs, and identifying what is working and what is not necessarily getting us what we need, that we begin to look at and either re-examine or change. I think additionally to that, we need to recognize a lot of growth while we want it quickly. There are a lot of things that may take a little bit longer. So while we're doing that with an LCAP, we'll review the LCAP from the beginning. We've gone through a 3-year cycle and look at is what we've planned and the goals that we've set returning what we want to see. If it is, we'll continue down the road. If it's not, then we need to ask those difficult questions and move as appropriate.
What about you, Dr. Hanson?
And if I may?
Yeah, please.
If I may, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If I may, from the research assessment and evaluation part, more on the technical and the statistical aspects, once we get a handle on what our programs are doing and where we actually gauge what progress is, then we can start to trend the information, and then we can start setting the goals and targets within reason for what we can see from what we're trying to do with students. When you're talking about anywhere between 10,000 to 18,000 students, or in the smarter balance, when you're talking 3,000 per grade, that's a lot of students to go ahead and move. So when targets are made for 6% or higher, that may or may not really reflect what can happen versus a plus or minus 3%, which is something more statistical. And that's the collaboration part of setting the targets.
Okay.
I'd like to add something that I think is most important. So we have general data right now. When it becomes formalized, we would definitely need to disaggregate that data at the highest priority and then look at the comparison of our student groups, looking at also the gaps in the groups and ensuring that we have programs in place that we think can close the gap as well as excel our students, all students at the same time. So that is extremely important. The other thing about the academic achievement that we're reaching through mastery of essential learning in the classroom, we have some process in place to reduce in some of the collaboration around our outcomes so that the individuals, our teachers who are most impacting that it's academic achievement in the classrooms, that they're looking at ongoing data, a data continuum from the time they're providing instruction to the time that they have mastery of essential learning, and then if they don't, getting that afterwards. So that is a major component and something that we're working diligently on this year as well.
Can I add a few things? Thank
Please.
you. So, thank you.
As I said this morning, you're our only employee, so.
That's true. So thank you for the presentation. And that's a great question presently, and I know the board and I have talked about this often. I just want the board to remember a couple things. This is year 2 or 3 for many of these initiatives. And so we shouldn't jump yet. Often it takes 4, 5 years to move an organization to see this kind of changes. The LCAP, year 2 or 3. We've worked very hard this year specifically, and we'll continue to work hard on tightening up our accountability monitoring that we have from the LCAP. In extended cabinet, we review that quarterly as an entire cabinet and go over that. And so as we have tightened up the accountability, as we look at the data, we're seeing the needle move, maybe not as fast as we'd like to, but it's too quick to jump ship. We need to keep the path that we're on for at least a couple more years. And then the work that they're doing in curriculum instruction, we absolutely need to get the data down to our teachers and build their capacity, because that's where we're going to see the changes made. And so it really is going forward about building the capacity of our teachers around actual data, as Paul's mentioned tonight, so that they can begin to make the necessary changes and provide that first best instruction that we need to take care of in the classroom. So this is great work from the team to put this together. I think it's very simple and clear to see the 12 indicators and see the color code, see that we have made progress in areas, that we need to make progress in other areas, and that we need to really tighten up our data and accountability and monitoring, push it down to the teachers and build their capacity. So those are my comments about this. And again, too soon to jump. We need to stay the course.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. Ms. Corminday. I see your name on this thing too. Sorry.
Your name was up there too, so he got confused. It's a hyphenated thing. So I have a question regarding those SBAC data are pretty miserable. I mean, the RLA and the math, they're really concerning. And I hear what Dr. Hanson's saying, but so we're what in SBAC? We're 2 years in now? 2 or 3? 2?
3.
So we just
This is the third year. We had basically when it first started, and then 2 years for actually alignment.
Okay.
And starting to understand.
So my question is, there, of course, was there's sort of a adaptation period, I think, that goes along with the new testing. And are we getting any support from the state regarding any control or monitoring they're doing with these data and the testing to see how much we can tease out as being a factor of newness or adaptation to new testing versus actual proficiency? And do you know what I'm saying?
I believe so. In one way of saying it, I think they did the vetting out the first year or so, and they've taken out some procedures that they found were actually counter to the new testing protocols. I do believe, however, the computer adaptive testing environment itself is still new to the education field. And as such, we'd have to go ahead and still work on some of the skills that students have, I would think. And again, this is working with instruction and their view. In terms of state assistance, they do have things which help us in terms of what may be on the claims and some standards, but there's a lot of things to that. And at this time, they do not have the environment to emulate a full computer adaptive assessment. So until that kind of aligns where we get the resources from the state or the Smarter Balance Consortium, we will still kind of be trying to catch up on the technological side of things, and that still may be a factor. However, the way, as with this year, they're recalibrating or they're looking at why there was a dip statewide and actually consortium-wide in the Smarter Balanced Assessments. I'm not sure about the PARC assessments, which is the counterpart, but in terms of that, they're looking at what went into the assessments that might have changed for students. And so with that, they will make what I'm expecting to be a calibration to go ahead and say, let's get that so that we can start to compare from year to year. So that's, other than the resources that we've been given, which they keep adding to for interim assessments, the technology piece is going to still be a barrier, I believe.
Yeah, okay. So you're telling me there is a statistician at the state level, at least that's, I'm hoping so, that's monitoring the testing as it goes forward, that can look at the variables for some of the poor performances. So, okay, thank you.
One comment from you too. I would not suggest that we should jump ship or look to change course at this time at all, but these numbers are a little bit concerning, and I think we can all agree on that. But I think what would help is to put these numbers in context to other districts. And I'm sure we have that data somewhere, and just for the sake of presentation and simplicity, it's probably just too overwhelming to do that. But I think that would really help me to see how we're stacking it up against districts in our region, and also districts similar to our size or our demographics. Because this is going to be the new measure of, greatschools.org. This is where parents are going to go and say, oh, I'm not sending my kid to Riverside Unified because their SBAC is, 35%, and I can go to, XYZ and it's, 52%, whatever the case may be.
But Mr. Lee, that's why I was asking too, is even districts that aren't similar to ours, how are they doing, and can they account for the variation? And that's what I want to know, because if it's statewide, if it's, the same as it is in Palos Verdes as it is here, right? That's why I was asking about that.
So I think that would help, because, well, nobody wants to see these kind of performance numbers, because we want all of our kids to achieve. I mean, this is our reality, whether it's the test or how our kids know how to take the test. Again, I'm not an educator, so maybe this sounds naive, but if we're teaching grade level standards and our kids are learning the grade level standards, then they're going to show, some significant achievement, I would think. So I think it would help. I know this is baseline, and I know we're putting a lot of these systems in place, and I think that's one thing I can commend, especially commend. There's lots of things, but Dr. Hansen and his team that he's done since he's arrived here is really try to put systems in place to get us organized so we have a jumping off point. And it sounds like we're getting to that point where we're getting ready to jump, and we're already jumping, and now we just got to kind of figure out how to fine tune it. So I'm excited to see, as years progress, how these numbers improve. In the meantime, I'd like to see how our neighboring districts are doing with these same numbers, and maybe some districts that are really excelling in some of these indicators, and what they're doing, and how we can mimic some of the things that they're doing, so we don't have to recreate the wheel.
President Lee?
Excellent job. Yes, sir.
Thank you, and thanks for the comments from the board. Just so the board understands too, these numbers still are embargoed, so we can't have ready access to how other districts have done. However, we've been on the phone and talking to them, but when things are unembargoed, what staff we have agreed to do is put up the 12 indicators. The last slide, please, Dr. Lewis. So those same 12 indicators, we are reaching out, and we're going to look at those 12 indicators to the urban districts minus LA and San Diego. They're just so big, and even Long Beach. But about the size of our district, from 30,000 to 60,000. So up and down the state. And you'll have that in report in October, as well as our county, because we're used to seeing how we're doing in the county. And so you're going to see the 23 districts. But again, it's tough to compare us in the county to one of the smaller New View type school districts, but we'll still do that. And it'll be around these 12 indicators, and some of the districts, most all of that will be public record for us that they have. We may not be able to have some, I don't know if Paul, that is public record for the AP and IB, but I've met with him, or I should say we've met with him. His staff's already working on that. We could have provided you some for this report, but there would have been a lot of things that we couldn't have provided because it's embargoed by the state and has been released. So we decided to pump the brakes. We said, let's not do it for this report. Let's come back when we compare apples to apples, me and 12 indicators to 12 indicators. And you'll see, again, the large urban districts in our county. And you're going to get the timing of that. It was in the press enterprise this last week. It's going to be released and unembargoed when? Paul, do you remember the date?
In August 29th.
August the 29th. And so we'll come back presently, and maybe you and I can plan, but probably that 1st of October meeting, as then the research and development staff can, and to do that. And that'll mirror what we did last year. And in that meeting, we'll show the comparison and begin to talk about causes and cures, and really even show how it's broken down with our different socioeconomic and groups and things such as that. So great catch on your part, and it will be helpful for all of us to do that dipstick measure, if you will, in that comparison for districts our size as well as in the county. Just wanted you to know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
guys. It's just after 8 o'clock and we're coming up to the conclusion of the meeting. Not too bad. We will end with board members' comments, and we'll start with Mrs. Alavi, if she's ready.
Sure. I've got two fun things to talk to you about. If you guys could pull up thank you. This is a little short PowerPoint that I gave to teachers and principals this week. Go ahead and get started. As you know, this is going to be the largest community art project that Riverside has ever seen. We're going to be taking at least 350, we have 420, but it's going to be somewhere in that vicinity, of those giant inflatable spheres. And we're going to be having students paint them within the next, 7 months or so. And then we're going to float them on Lake Evans at Fairmount Park. So hopefully it looks something like this. This is what they did 5 years ago in Los Angeles, and we hope it's going to look something like that. Go ahead. So that's Lake MacArthur in Los Angeles, and you've seen this picture, but I just wanted to let teachers and principals know kind of what we hope to emulate. Go ahead. And we have painting teams that are going to be starting in our schools at the end of September. I have 3 painting teams already assembled, and they're going to be going into schools and having kids paint vinyl spheres, okay? And we've already started. Those are the vinyl spheres before they've been painted. And we have them lined up in Burgess's warehouse right now, ready to go out to the schools when they're ready to be blown up. Obviously, we deflate them, we bring them out, we inflate them. We don't try to carry them blown up like that. Okay, I think that's it. Yep, that shows you the size of it. They're easy to carry. They're just very difficult to maneuver. So anyway, I will give you an update as we get into the school painting teams. I'll give you an update and tell you how it's going. But I wanted to tell you two very good things, and that is that all of our painting materials have been provided by RCTA, who have given us a donation, and Schools First Credit Union, which have been very nice to give us some money to pay for all the paints and brushes and tarps and things. And so we're all set to go on that. And I just wanted to give you that update. The other thing I wanted to tell you that was really fun is that sometimes I'm cleaning out boxes in my basement, and I came across an orange and green, which is the annual for Poly in 1918. It's called the orange and green at that time because Poly was a boys' school and the girls' high school combined to do the annual, but they were really 2 separate schools. But what I found interesting, because I was just reading it for fun, because it was my great aunt's annual. Ona Stalder was her name. But the interesting thing was, Poly High School in 1918 were not the Bears, they were the Huskies. Now, I don't know when it changed from Huskies to Bears, but I would be very curious about that. Also, I wanted to let you know that they had required courses in 1918. All the girls were required to take a Red Cross course in which they made bandages for the soldiers. Remember, that was World War I. So they made bandages. And then halfway through the year, they were told by the federal government that that the French school children needed clothes, and so they started making children's clothes to send in big care packages to France, which I thought was fun. And all the boys were required to do military training, and they drilled every day. So just to give you a different kind of view. And then the final thing was, if you look at their football roster, they played 5 games, and they were all obviously, in 1918, they had to play a team of equal size. I'm not sure where they had to go, but they played Chaffey, San Bernardino, Orange, and they went clear into Los Angeles to play, which must have taken forever. I can't even imagine how long it must have taken for the team to travel all the way to these different locations. But I just thought I'd share that with you because it's really fun. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Alvey. Mr. Hunt.
I just want to echo what my wife wrote, all of you all and the staff. Just thank you for your kindness and consideration in the recent passing of Jerry's brother, and it certainly meant a lot to all of us. And just time of life, I guess, we're entering, but we appreciate it very, very much from everyone. Thank you.
Dr. Farouk.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment a little bit about the fact that, I had the pleasure of going on the Footsteps to Freedom tour. And, I see a few people here from our cohort. It was an incredible experience. And I think in light of, what's happening, what happened in Virginia and what's happening around the country, the message, the history, its significance and relevance couldn't be more important now than ever. And it wasn't, for me, I'd studied a lot of the cultural and historical implications of slavery and the Underground Railroad and everything. But I was really blown away by how much I realized how little I did know about history, and also just how much the trip really impacted me from a very soulful perspective as well. So I really cherish all the experience that I had with all of you, and just wanted to say that. And then I just want to say that I'm really excited about the upcoming school year and going through that journey with all of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk. Mrs. Lock-Dawson.
Thank you. Well, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the new school year. Always a fun time. Just two things quickly, kind of going on something Dr. Farouk was talking about. I had the opportunity this summer on my summer vacation to tour Auschwitz in Poland, the concentration camp, and very similar to what Dr. Farouk said. And I was struck by, I know Shane has also been there, but I was really struck by the systematic and methodical ascendancy of fascism and how slowly but deliberately it occurred. And I was very struck by that it was a bit like a lobster in a boiling water. I think we have to remain ever vigilant. I know as I'm getting all hot and bothered up here talking about, we cannot let hate take over. We cannot let some of these things happen and have history repeat itself. So I was very moved by that experience, and particularly in light of what's occurred recently, I'm just my quest for justice and upholding that has just been renewed with a fervor. So the other thing I just wanted to quickly say, Mrs. Alavi and I participated this week in our visual performing arts a community workshop where we had our VAPA specialist, Anne Marie, work with the city in partnership, and we convened members of the community to identify community partnerships and ways that we could work and leverage our resources here in the district to enhance the artistic experiences of our children, our students, as well as our teachers and our community. And it was refreshing for me to see the city so engaged. We had an assistant city manager there, and Al Zelenka and other members of the community, and it was terrific to see so many folks on board, and we had so many great ideas brought forth on what we can do to leverage what we have. So anyway, I just wanted to let everybody know it's exciting, wonderful things coming. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Lock-Dawson. Just a couple of things for me. First, wanted to say thank you to Mrs. Ybarra and her team for the welcome this morning. I know a lot of you were there this morning. It was perfectly executed. It was efficient. It was warm. It was welcoming. The theme was appropriate. Everybody that shared their experience was positive. And I think that's the kind of introduction you want to provide for anybody that's coming into our district. So good job to you and your team. Looking forward to Thursday to continue that excitement for starting a new school year and starting something fresh and new. I think that's a good message for everybody to hear. And then just one last thing was last year, and I gave it to Dr. Hansen, but towards the end of last year, my son, he finished kindergarten, and so we got his DIBELS test in the mail. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world. My wife's definitely a lot smarter than me, but together it took us 10, 15 minutes to try to figure out, like, what is this test telling us? Like, it appeared to be good. Like, it sounded like, I know my son is getting better at reading, so I wasn't too concerned, but it just made me think of parents who parents might have trouble trying to understand and digest what that test is telling them. So I'm assuming that this is a state requirement that we have to send it as it's provided. And if that's true, I think it would be very helpful to provide a supplemental sheet to translate the nonsense that's going on that page. Just say, good, bad, okay, in danger, whatever it is. Because I think that's your first point of intervention, right? If a parent is getting a Dibbles test in the mail and it's, mediocre or not good, that's your first warning, like, man, we got to do something with this, right? But if you just look at it and you're like, I don't know what this is, I'm just going to get rid of it. So I would like to hear back on how we can provide a better translation to that document that's going home to all of our parents. Right? Yeah, the report card was one thing. We took a lot of time, I know, and staff took a lot of time to try to make that as friendly as possible. It's not always going to be completely friendly, but I think we're at a point where everybody really came together and made that as friendly as possible while still achieving the objectives of checking in and letting students know how they're doing on the standards. But the Dibbles, if we're going to use that, we have to use that as our basis for whether kids are reading. We need to provide a supplemental to parents. So I hope we can do that for next year when school's out. So that is it for me. If there's no other agenda items for future meetings, board? Nothing? Okay. So we will close this meeting in honor of a few of our previous employees. The first being Ann Adams, who managed one of the largest centralized elementary school cafeterias during her 15-year career with Riverside Unified. Also want to close this meeting in honor of Wanda Copenhaver, who worked in the Student Records Department in Riverside Unified for over 30 years. And last, Miss Hazel Russell, who was RUSD's first African-American teacher, who passed away on Friday. There was a nice article in the Press Enterprise. She died at the age of 93. So with that, we close in their honor, and we will see you all on Thursday, and then again at our next board meeting, which is on September 5th because of the holiday on the 4th.